Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our Ask the Experts panel. Just to introduce you to the two experts, Gil and Ben, and then there's me. We're going to be looking at the value of SEO and the value to you, which is vital to know when you are budgeting for SEO. And the reason is that we're constantly asked, what is the value that we need to put onto SEO? And of course, the first question we had as soon as we put out that we were doing this RC Experts was, what is the value of SEO to me? How do I value for it? How do I budget for it, I should say? So I'm going to pass over to Gil, who's going to make it all very clear.
All right, I hope so. So we've created a calculator that we will be sharing with you guys later on our website. It's an Excel sheet that would help you demonstrate the value of SEO in more monetary terms. So I'm going to walk you through step by step how to use this calculator, and you can later on do it yourself and kind of use it and play around with it and see if you can demonstrate to your stakeholders in your company what's the value of SEO for you. So let's get going. So you'll see that there is this section, which is the calculator section, where you are required to add some inputs. So the first column is about a keyword. A keyword is a search term that users or your potential customers will be searching on Google that you want them to find you. For example, if you are a lawyer in London and you want people to find you when people use the search term lawyer in Chelsea, for example, all right? So that will be a keyword that if people would find you with that, you will probably get business and will be able to get more customers. So you'll figure out which keywords or which keyword represents which products. So that's column one. So we'll call it now keyword number one. The second column is talking about the monthly UK search volume. So this doesn't have to be UK. It can be global, but it's easier to specify the search volume per country. You will be needed to use an external tool that estimates how many people use or how many people search this search term a month on Google or other search engines. So for example, we estimate, and using our external tool, one of them is called SEMrush. There's other tools called Moz SEO, and you'll be able to find out kind of the estimate for the search volume. So for this case, we'll assume that 4,000 people in London or in Chelsea are searching for a lawyer in London or lawyer in Chelsea. Now, the third column is about monthly clicks per keyword. So currently, you are able to identify how many people are searching for this keyword and how many people are actually clicking every month to reach your own website. To reach that stats, you are able to go to your Google Search Console. This is a code that is installed on your website that sends Google this traffic information. If you don't have Google Search Console installed on your website, I would highly recommend doing it now. And that will provide insights about the organic performance of your website on Google specifically. The third column is also derived from Google Search Console, is the average position that your keywords shows. So you'll be able to enter Search Console and enter the keyword, and it will tell you that on average, the keyword is ranking on position 20, for example. All right, so what does position 20 means is if you open the Google search and you search for the keyword, you'll need to count 20 results. So that will be at the end of the second page. All right?
Because there's 10 on a page.
Exactly. So 10 results per page. So that would be at the end of the second page. Now, Mark, you can explain these three.
I love it when we move from fact to fiction. It gets passed to me. So Gil's been talking about real numbers that are available. I'm going to talk about assumptions. So your conversion rate is based on assumption. There is work you can do to work out what your conversion rate is, but unless you're a huge PLC with vast resources, I wouldn't recommend it. You will know roughly what your conversion rate is. It's effectively what we're trying to measure here is how many people who visit your website eventually turn into customers or clients. And it's always a smaller proportion than you think it's going to be. So in this particular scenario, we've put in a 2% conversion rate. I think we're probably being a bit generous, but it does vary according to your business and to your website and to the competitive nature of the industry that you are in. And the complexity of the sale too. If it's an easy purchase, like you're buying a product that a widget that does something fairly straightforward, then it's very easy and you'll probably get quite a high conversion rate. If on the other hand, you're buying a complex service, Gil mentioned lawyers in Chelsea, likelihood is it's quite a complex requirement that you have, then conversion rate would probably be lower.
So let's just change it now to make more sense. We'll change it to 1%.
Okay. And then you've got your product value or your project value, depending on whether you're selling product or services. And the value per sale is dependent upon a number of factors, but in this case, we've put in £400. So you would expect to have the value at 400 per sale. If you are selling high value products, it might be worth £100,000. It could be worth a lot less. It could be just £50. It depends what you're selling. But it's worth knowing your project value on average per sale.
And these also relate, in the context of these fields, relate specifically, don't they, to the related keyword for that product. Then you might have multiple keywords for a product.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, whether it's multiple landing pages or that you're trying to leverage keywords for, but we're trying to attribute a value per keyword.
Yeah. A company will have a lot of keywords. So for each service or product, there will be 10, 20, 30 keywords. And the company may have 100 products. So you can see there's a lot of work to do and the value can be quite high. So moving on, we've got the lifetime value. And it's worth knowing this because the real value to your company is probably what the customer or client will spend over a period of time. So you could set the lifetime at 5 years or 10 years. Doesn't really matter, whatever's appropriate to your business. But sometimes it's worth looking at the lifetime value because you may not make much money on the first sale, but over the lifetime, you may make a lot of money.
Okay.
Thank you.
So let's say this would be then, we can change it, let's say £5,000 now. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I wanted to jump through to the second sheet just now, okay, not to get you too confused, but I want to talk about the click-through rate per your position on Google. So what does that mean? When people search on Google, the most of the people, or let's say the biggest chunk, press or click on the first 3 search results. So based on our research and other research that we found online, if your website URL or it comes on the top 3 results on Google, on average, you will be getting 19% of the clicks, and so forth. So if you're on the position number 4, still on the first page, you're only going to get 6% of the clicks 3% if you're on the end of the first page. And if you're on the second page, the results only get about 1.5% of the results. So it's a very low amount. And this really demonstrates why you'd want to be on the first page for sure, but also occupy the first positions. So you'll get a bigger chunk of the search.
Yeah, it's probably worth pointing out these are the people who actually click on the page, not the people who visit the page. There'll be many visitors who don't actually click, and they're not measured in this. It's just the people who click.
Yeah, so let's assume 100 people search for lawyers in Chelsea in a certain month. If you're on position number 1 to 3, you'll be getting 20 clicks or 19 clicks.
Well, no, it's if 100 people click, having searched for it, then click on one of the companies that are displayed there, you'll get 20.
Yeah. So then going back to the calculator, you'll be able to scroll right to this section. And this is really where the kind of the main value of this calculator is. We split it to 5 different sections. You got column A, B, C, and D, and then your actual calculation. So how is your performance now? You'll be able to see what value you will be gaining if your page or your keyword will be ranking on the different positions. So let's say you're currently getting, on the red section, you're currently getting 40 clicks. So the product value for that, based on the data or the information that you entered, is £200 and £2,000 lifetime value. If you were to rank on the second page of Google, you are estimated to get 56 clicks per month, and this will be your product value, and so forth. So let's say if you are ranking on position 4 to 6, you're estimated to get 240 clicks, and then your product value will be £1,200 and £12,000 for lifetime value.
This is based on the values that we've assumed earlier in the calculation, isn't it? And
yeah, so this is automatically based on the value that you've entered. So if we were to change this to 7, so the lifetime value will change to 7,000. You'll see that the lifetime value here in the calculator will be updating. Okay. And looking at position 1 to 3, you'll be getting 760 clicks. So that is your potential clicks if your page will rank on the first 3 results. And this will be your product value and the gain. So what you can do is once you enter your keywords, you'll be able to see the difference between the actual results on the right and what benefit or what extra value you will be getting if you'll be ranking higher on the search results in Google.
if any of you do have any questions about that, please do drop them in the chat box at the bottom of the screen. So that tells us, on basic terms, that in the actual column, where we're only seeing 40 clicks presently, even to sustain a position on the second page of Google results 10 through 20, we need to increase our potential clicks by at least 16 clicks. So that tells us we already have some work to do in terms of the optimization for that particular keyword.
That's right. Now, one more comment here, and maybe to add that if your keyword is already on average ranking on the second page, for example, and you're not getting 56 clicks, you're getting less than that. That means that your page or your the content of your page is not optimized enough to attract enough people to click on your line, on your URL, and people choose to click on your competitors. For that, you'll be able to update the meta text and meta descriptions to gain more clicks.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will be sending this after the presentation, so you'll be able to get this directly and experiment with this. Feel free to send us an email if you've got any questions, if you need any assistance with getting this data about your specific company. All right.
Yeah, we're here to help. I mean, I recognize it can be quite complex to somebody who's not mathematically inclined, though we put the formulas in. But some of the assumptions are quite difficult to make. And in fact, probably to be most effective, you're best to do various scenarios. So you make assumption 1, assumption 2, assumption 3, and then run through 3 scenarios. Now, whether you do that for every single search keyword search term, it's a lot of work, but it's worth doing if you have to find a budget and justify your budget at a senior level, because otherwise you're wide open to accusations of just basing it on guesswork. At least this way, it's assumption based, but you have quite a bit of hard data in there, and it's as near as you're going to get to the true value of your SEO, and also to be able to demonstrate why you should be spending more, because if you spend this amount more, you will get this amount of extra business. Again, it's assumption based, so do several scenarios, and that way people can see, your colleagues can see that you've made the effort to work it out, and that can be very useful for you.
All right. So one thing we haven't mentioned is that you're welcome to click on the Q&A box on the Zoom interface and enter any questions you may have. We've so far been receiving several questions, so we'll try to answer and be short when we answer the questions that we've been asked. So let's crack on. You guys ready?
Try us and see.
Okay. So one of the questions that we've got from Jenny is that, can my position on Google affect my brand? And maybe Mark can answer that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it makes a huge difference, though it's not something that would go onto your company balance sheet, of course. Unfortunately, it probably should. Brand values can go on the company balance sheet, but I don't think positions on Google can be, and at least I've not heard of it. But certainly in terms of a sort of soft measurement, yes, because anyone searching any of the keywords that you are high up on will see your brand there, and they will therefore respect you because of it. Because if you don't appear, they won't know about you. If you do appear and you're at the top, it's very impressive, particularly if it's a hotly contested keyword and there are a lot of companies competing for it. And particularly if you're coming above some of the sort of well-known brands that we see in our daily lives.
It's quite an interesting piece of research that we looked into recently, which was about how companies are, using SEO, becoming the sort of de facto source of information for the keywords that are being searched. So, for example, someone might ask the question on Google, how much salt do I have on my, how much salt is there on McDonald's fries? Now, you can be sure that the number one result for that answer is a landing page that McDonald's have made that exactly precisely answer that question. So certainly the big brands employ that strategy of making sure that all queries and any queries relating to their products or their brands online, they are the source of information and the go-to results in terms of keywords for that.
Yeah, and there has been a massive spike in Google searches this year. In fact, it's not a spike because it's still up there. So it could be a plateau. Who knows? But there has been a massive surge in Google searches in this last year, thanks to the coronavirus pandemic. And what that means is that people are using it more and more for everyday questions, really. And as I think I said earlier, if you're working remotely, sometimes working on your corporate database is slow and cumbersome, quicker to Google for information. So if you want somebody's phone number or email address or find out some detail about a product or a service, it's quicker to to go onto Google, find it, than it is to ask a colleague, because that takes a while. Whereas when we were all in offices together, you could just sort of shout across the room at your colleague and say, "Oh, how did they do that?" You can't do that anymore.
All right. So next question is for Ben. What value does SEO have for an individual stakeholders?
Well, a great deal of value. I think it's sometimes overlooked that if you break down the normal profiles for your stakeholders, from your partners to your investors to your employees, your as many as you can think across the full spectrum of individuals connected to your brand, you will find that there's an implicit value for SEO regarding the visibility of your brand online, and how, for instance, with employees, how it affects recruitment and retention, so that you can employ and retain the best skills and the highest value employees for your brand. They have a decision to make also when they join you. So they will be looking at the value of your business online, specifically related to SEO, and especially how competitive you are, how visible you are, the work you've done, what it might be that these searches lead to a suite of information about company policy for employees, holiday policies, staff development. So all of these potential landing pages and important points of information for that, even that small stakeholder group, represent in some way or another value to your business. Likewise within investors, they're going to. It's going to be a key performance indicator, really, how well your website performs and how that reflects the nature of your business, how ambitious you are as a company, how you measure up compared to your competitors in your market. So it's a really, though often overlooked, a really important indicator, I would say, in relation to stakeholder engagement.
It's very important for your customers or clients as well, because it reflects your status in the industry. So if you are in the supply, in the supply chain, and you're there at the top of the relevant search page, then people will see that and recognize you as an industry leader and be happy to engage with you. If you're nowhere to be seen, they won't find you unless they Google your name. But why should they do that? They may not even know it at that stage. So it's important to be there, because and the higher you are, the more status you bring. There used to be an old saying about IBM that you don't lose your job for buying IBM, because they were reassuringly expensive, but that you knew they were going to deliver. And so if you were in a junior in a purchasing department of a company, you never lose your job for buying IBM. And it's exactly the same with being at the top of the search engines. If you're on the top of the results page, you're clearly the industry leader. You're clearly the company to engage with. Somebody who's making a purchasing decision will feel confident about making that decision in your favor.
Yeah. So that comes back to the branding as well, Phil.
Yeah, branding, and just answering the queries of all those different individuals, all those different stakeholders, beyond the name of your brand appearing, high and that level of cognition. Where are the answers found for the queries that these stakeholders might have, and there's a value by implication, I think, if people engaging with your website online is able to access that information easily, and it's clearly depicted, and it ranks highly.
Mm.
Yeah, well, one of the reasons we've done this session and created this calculator for you guys is to help you explain and show the value of SEO, and it's often overlooked. It's much easier to show the results of a pay-per-click or advertising campaign online, because you have facts, you have exactly how much you spent and how much you've made, and that's it. But with SEO, because it's a long-term sort of project, it's harder to see. I've got another question that we've received in advance from Adrian. He asked, if care was taken to produce effective content at a given point of time, how much management and further modification is needed, and how often? Simply put, how does SEO change and how important it is to manage content accordingly? Maybe Ben and I could answer this.
You go for it, Gil. You take that one.
Okay, well, one to start off, it's very important to create good content for your website. The second step is to check a few months later whether that excellent content has been performing well. So you need to monitor and check, well, are you ranking high enough? Is the content good enough? If you think you created effective content, but you're still ranking on the third page on Google and you barely get any clicks, it may be good in your opinion, but it's not in the eyes of Google. So that's number one. But when you have produced really good content and Google likes it and pushes your results to the top results, so let's say position 1 to 3, you also need to make sure you stay there. And there's a few factors that can cause your ranking to reduce. One of them would be updates by Google. So every few months, Google is changing their algorithm and makes it to analyze the pages in a different way. I guess it changes according to trend and kind of like different priorities that Google wants to serve to its users. So that can lower your ranking, even if you haven't made any changes to your content. The second main reason would be your competition. So let's say one of your biggest competitors have written a new article. It's up to date. It's got all the data that you need, that a user would need to read. Google will probably rank that article higher than yours. Then you would definitely need to go and update your content and make sure it's ranking higher. So to kind of summarize that, you should monitor and have either software or constantly going in every few weeks to check that your content is staying at the positions you want it to.
Yeah, I'd back that up, Gil. You say in conclusion there, just analysing it scientifically, really ongoing, is a really important aspect to understanding, as you say, the changes that happen in spite of your content. Really, it's not just change for change's sake. It's that you need to be analysing the performance of those, what we come to understand as cornerstone, or what we tell the industry cornerstone landing pages or important assets, whether it's campaign assets or otherwise in terms of your web content. You analyse the performance of that, roll with the changes, make sure that you'll have a full understanding of how well that's performing, and then respond. And of course, in spite of taking some time and care over that content and the effort that takes to bring to perform well, to optimize well, there are many different external factors to that affect it in SEO terms, and lots of things that you probably aren't doing that you should be doing, which could be backlinks, could be anything. Do reference our previous webinars on SEO. It would be a big subject if we dived into the in individual parts of it. But you've got to you've got to understand what you're looking at to work out what your next move is.
Okay, great. We've got another question that we've been receiving from John. He asked, what are the benefits of content creation to the company? And I think it's a very good question. I think it talks about the hidden value of SEO. And Mark, maybe you want to answer that?
Yeah. It's really of most benefit, I would say, in terms of it expresses best practice and gets people involved in expressing that best practice. And that's really important, particularly where you have a knowledge-based company. So you could be either producing very high-tech products requiring quite clever people to do it, or you could be providing a service where you've got very highly qualified consultants and practitioners. What your going to be asking them to do in your content strategy is to write something or produce something that is really at the top of the industry. So this could be sometimes known as thought leadership, but it's essentially educational, because what you're trying to do is to educate people and to show people that you're a company right at the leading edge of the industry and therefore worth engaging with. So when you're asking colleagues to support you in your SEO, what you're doing is you're giving them the opportunity to sort of sharpen their pencil a little bit and show that they really know what they're talking about, because this is what will attract people and this is what Google will recognize and reward you for. And that has to be good, because essentially you're making sure that your colleagues know what they're talking about, that their knowledge is up to date, and that they can express it in a way that Google understands it, and perhaps, more importantly in the long run, that your clients and customers understand it.
Thank you. So someone asked, do I need to redesign my website in order to be successful at SEO, or do I need to, or can someone use his own website?
Existing website, you mean?
Yeah, if they can use the existing website, or they have to redesign it or update it to be successful.
I'll take that one if you like.
Yeah, pleasure.
Yeah, not everyone's in the market, are they, for a new website? And as we alluded to in a previous question, lots of people have greatly invested in their websites already that they may struggle to a greater or lesser degree to perform well. The answer is that it needs to be part of the conversation. I think it needs to be part of the consideration strategically. Does the platform I use support my strategy online, my digital marketing strategy? Does it support what I want to, our objectives, our business objectives? Is it adaptive enough? Can I create content at will without it getting snared up in development or having to rely heavily on third parties, or lots of different examples why websites fall short, and they do over time. They get old quite quickly. I mean, it's we find it all the time ourselves. It's always a surprise to us how the time to refresh a website comes around very quickly. So in answer to that, there are means, you can employ sort of conduit solutions, as it were, that work in tandem with your website, that sort of sit alongside, say complementary solutions is probably the right word for it, that sit alongside. And in our case, we would sort of recommend focus landing pages or sales landing pages, however they are built technically, as long as they meet the criteria of performing well, and that includes the speed, the proprietary code, how well a website is written, the content itself, how rich the content is. Sometimes you need a landing page to give you the feedback itself on how to develop it further. You might want to A/B test two separate designs in order to really narrow down the focus and optimize the performance of a landing page. We see that often all the time for user experience design in e-commerce. So the answer is there's no one answer, but scrutinizing the performance of your website has to be at the forefront of your mind perpetually. I mean, I would encourage people to review it quarterly, or otherwise, but if you're doing the right analysis, of course, on a granular level, you can see really how you can form a picture of how well your website supports your strategy. And all the time you're trying to lean into the important areas of your website that need to perform well for you over a given period. We break our marketing effort often into campaigning for that reason, because it gives us a tight focus on what we want to achieve, and the website needs to reflect that.
Yeah, if I can add to that, I mean, I know this is not my specialism, but a new website is a big CapEx undertaking, and sometimes people feel the time is not right to do it. And So there is this use of landing pages. We can build landing pages, which is a kind of stopgap, and you can run that for a year or two, actually. But the problem will be that you will ultimately lose out. And Google finds it easier to search websites that are bang up to date using the latest platform that it feels happiest to search. And if you have anything less than that, then you will be losing out to your competitors who have undertaken that capex. So it's a difficult decision, and particularly at times when the economy is perhaps a little bit less certain than it might otherwise be. But the alternative is to fall back and to not appear on the search results page. And therefore you lose out business to your competitors. And that then has a kind of snowball effect and just gets worse and worse. So I normally would advise people, if they possibly can, to look at completely replacing their website, because otherwise it's rather like, you'll have one hand tied behind your back. In fact, two hands tied behind your back as it gets older and older.
And one more thing to add, there is always a kind of a balancing game in SEO between content and the technology that you use. And in the past, because a lot of the websites were quite old and basic in the way that they're structured, Google gave that a bit of a less of an importance and was focusing on the content side much more. But now with time, what Google likes to see is, or other search engines likes to see, is highly perform. They see high performance and seeing websites running really fast, and they would like to see the technology is up to date. So is let's say if you have an old website and your content is very, very good, maybe even better than your competitors, having the good tech will push you up the kind of the ladder of the ranking much easier, and you'll have less obstacles in the climbing of the Google ladder.
Yeah, Google needs to crawl your website, and if it's nice and up to date and sharp, and the coding is perfect and it's recent, then they'll be able to extract the information to present to you on their get snarled up in messy coding or coding that's out of date, and it then slows down the speed at which that information can be presented. So you're on a loser, and the older it gets, the worse it gets. And I'm afraid there's no way around it. It's just one of those awkward things. To come back to what Ben was saying, yes, you can set up landing pages, and that can tide you over for a bit, but it's only going to work for a bit before you start losing out even worse. So I would strongly recommend stitch in time, make that investment now, really.
All right. We've got time for, I guess, a couple more questions. One of the questions that we've got is on the chat now. Let me look. Okay, so it's, my website is just an online brochure to support telesales and the occasional one-to-one meetings. Why should I invest in SEO?
Shall I answer that? Well, I think I just did, didn't I? I don't know who asked the question, but to whomever, I hope you got my answer before. Yeah, it's in the old days, websites were a bit like online brochures. These days, you just can't afford to do that. Building your website's just the beginning, really. People are going to look for you on Google. If you're not there, then you're not in the game. And so it has to be so much more than an online brochure, because the expectations of the market, the expectations of Google, the expectations of all the people who work in the company who want to be working for a successful company are for a website that pulls in business. It's sometimes called inbound marketing, whereas the old brochure websites were, I don't know what you call that, outbound marketing. They were just business cards, really. I think the days of those are long gone, but we do come across them from time to time, don't we?
Yeah, I think I would add that, the context of this question says about telesales. Well, more importantly than ever, especially with our sort of remote business activity, and especially in the context of telesales, your customer has an instant sort of inline route to a view of your business and your products. They could be easily, and more often than not, sat on the computer on the internet whilst you're on the phone with them. And where with a very quick search, they can see exactly how you are positioned in the market compared to competitors. And if you're missing out on the opportunities available to you there to sell that product, that could be the difference between a sale and not a sale. And it's actually, if I may, it segues quite neatly into a question later on, which is if I accept that I won't get high on Google for generic terms, is there nevertheless a benefit to me competing for these terms? Will Google recognize me doing this and therefore reward my efforts on niche terms accordingly? The reason it relates to brochure sites, or what we historically recognize as brochure style websites, is that it's quite hard to compete for generic terms. And we see this all the time with companies. They have an About Us page and a shop page and a blog or whatever it might be, these generic terms that sort of ubiquitous across the web. And even further than that, when you break down your service level offering, you've got terms that are used very generally, very commonly between competitors in the same marketplace. And brochure sites reflect that inadequacy, really, in terms of SEO. Quite often, they're not leveraging the niche terms within their space online that they really need to be in order to compete more hotly. And I think, Gil, you might be able to add to that in terms of the key, finding niche keywords and long tail keywords that help to mitigate the issue of generic market terms.
Yeah, in some way, it's better to rank on longer keywords because they're more exact and they're more accurate. So a user searching for a lawyer in London is not so sure of what exactly is looking for. Is he looking for a divorce lawyer? Is he looking for financial advice? Is he looking for we're not quite sure. But if someone's searching for the divorce lawyer in Chelsea, which is a longer keyword, then you want to rank for that because you know that this person is ready to buy. He can't wait to run away from his house and get that paper signed up. So he is ready to come in and sign and pay you. So there is a massive benefit of creating content which is related to kind of more niche topics, because the searches, even though they're much lower, will be much more beneficial. So many companies will produce a lot of sort of landing pages or content on their blog that is focusing on those long tail keywords just for that. Kind of like thinking about spreading the net as wide as possible and catching all the little bits rather than trying to fight the giants in your industry.
Yeah, and that makes it more of a level playing field, doesn't it? Because on that search term you used, you can compete against the Linklaters and the Big Ten. You can compete on a level playing field because you may have something really of value in that narrow, defined market, which is divorce lawyers in Chelsea. Whereas Linklaters or one of the Big Ten, they simply won't have anything very specific for that, probably. So it's much more of a level playing field for you. So, do not lose hope if you're an SME.
Yeah, and that's what we'll do with our clients, isn't it, from the outset when we're working at a strategic, sort of structural strategy for their content, is doing the keyword research and looking for the gaps between and finding the sort of, the soft areas that you can pursue that will help to make sure that you'll compete more effectively.
All All right. So I think our time is up. We've got a few more questions. We will answer them directly to the people that asked, because we don't want to keep you all too long.
And we'll send you the spreadsheet if you're interested. If you email us if you'd like it, and we can talk you through it if you like, or explain it in some way or other. I've also written a blog recently on this very same subject, and you'll find that on our website. And so please look for that. And we will be doing another Ask the Experts same time next month. Will we not?
We will.
And Ben and Gil will be ready to answer your questions. Okay, good. Look, thank you for listening in, everyone. We've had lots of attendees, so it's very rewarding. And we look forward to seeing you again next month. Thank you.